Welcome back to a Pairs Well knitting tutorial. Today's tutorial, we're going to be showing you how to bind off and pattern. This is either knitting knit stitches, purling purl stitches. It could be a combo of rib stitches, so knits and purls. We've got a mix today. I've slowed the video down for us so we can go slow and go stitch by stitch. My first section is all knit stitches, so I'm going to be knitting my first and second stitch, bringing those over after they've been knit onto my right hand needle like I normally would when I'm working my fabric. But here's where my bind off happens. I'm going to be taking that first stitch from my right needle and bringing it over with my left needle past my second stitch. That's my bind off. I'm moving on to my next stitch. That's a knit stitch as well. So I'm going to work that as a knit. And same thing that I just did, I'm pulling that first knit stitch of my right hand needle over my second stitch of my right hand needle using my left needle to guide it through. I've got a couple more stitches, so I'm going to work the same. So I'm going to knit that next stitch over to my right needle as if I was working it. And then I'm going to be pulling that first stitch from my right needle over the second stitch of my right needle. And that's where the bind off's happening again. This is a bind off and pattern. We've got one more knit stitch coming up. We're going to be working that stitch, just knitting it. We're bringing the first stitch again from my right needle, using my left needle and pulling it all the way over that second stitch. So I've bound off a few stitches already. Because we're binding off, we're getting rid of the stitch marker. We have another knit stitch upon us, so we're going to be working that stitch knitting with my right hand needle. Just ensuring that it is knits, but I do have a purl coming up, so just noting that. Working my stitch with knitting, bringing that first stitch of my right needle over my second stitch of my right needle to bind off. In that pattern, it's a 2x1 rib that I'm going to be working now. So we're working a second stitch knit and bringing that first stitch over the second stitch of the right needle. And now we're getting to a purl stitch. This is my first purl stitch. I take my working yarn to the front to purl my work, and we work the purl stitch over to the right needle. Same idea now. I take that first stitch over the left needle to cast off. We're back with knit stitches, 2 more. So I knit that stitch onto my right needle and pulling my first stitch over the second. So we are essentially knitting the knits and purling the purls. That's why it's called binding off and pattern. The next stitch is a purl, so I take my working yarn and I'm going to be bringing it forward in front of my work, and we're purling that stitch. Bringing my first stitch over my second, just as I would for if it were a knit stitch. And we are back to a couple more knit stitches and then back to a purl. So this is a 2x1 rib that we're casting off. And what you're going to find with this cast off is it's very easy to do. It's really efficient, so quite quick to do. And as you're binding off in pattern, the bind off is almost braided like, or some people might say like a stockinette stitch look where it's a V. And if you were to only knit across, make knits, no purls, to ribbing, you're going to have that braid effect come forward. If you did all purls, that braid effect would go to the back. And what I'm showing you right now is that braid effect becomes adjacent almost to that fabric. So if the ribbing, which often would be at the bottom hem of a garment, a sweater, a vest, whatever it may be, it's going to be, how could I say, it's going to be at the bottom of your work. So you're not going to see the full braid piece or the stockinette piece, but just the side of it. I feel like it's a really clean bind off and really easy to work. Another really nice thing working a bind off and pattern is that if you make a mistake, you don't like your gauge, it's very simple to rip out. You can just pull it out as if you had knit it. And I find when we're working bind offs with a sewn bind off, it can be quite troublesome to pull out. It can take a lot of time, and it's a challenge. This is really easy to modify your gauge if you have to, and to pull out with different fibers. We've got that last stitch coming up, and we're going to work it the same. So this one's just a purl stitch, finishing off with bringing that first stitch over the second onto the right needle. And we are sorted out here. We're going to pull with the needle and increase the hole of the stitch. I use my finger. You can use your needle, whatever you need. And we are going to bring that working yarn, because that was our last stitch, through it. So we're going to break the yarn, or you can cut it if you have scissors close by. I'm a breaker. And we are just going to tuck that tail through the hole, loop it through to close off the stitch. Otherwise, the stitch would come out if we didn't use the tail to go through it. And just give it a little tug. And there she is. She's knotted. Voila, we have a clean in pattern bind off where we knit the knits and we purl the purls, and she is looking pretty. Really easy, really effective, efficient little bind off, and I think she looks nice. That's our in pattern bind off. Thanks so much for joining. Pretty stretchy, and feeling pretty happy with it. I hope you have a fabulous bind off party wherever you are. Enjoy your knitting, and we will see each other soon. Thanks so much. Take care.